Both Du Bois and Booker T. Washington was right. They did not contradict each other. Both were speaking out of their respective environments and backgrounds. Booker T. Washington, born a slave, and from his background, he never seen his father, but he suspected he was white because he was a little less than black. Du Bois, a New England aristocrat, and you can be a New England aristocrat without having money. Good family, good education, good manners, good friends, hadn't disgraced yourself publicly or privately, so you're an aristocrat. So he was accepted. Du Bois wanted to go to Harvard as the young men of that town, a socialist town. There used to be whole socialist towns in America where the education of the brightest young men were taken care of by the town. Knowing that he got the high marks and good to book and well thought of, knowing for sure he would go to Harvard, they sent him to Fisk. And there Du Bois discovered who he was. His white friend, including girlfriend. Now he discovered he must enter race work. The best thing that could have happened to him. It shocked him out of his illusions. He knew that was a dividing line. And he began his race work. Eventually he would go to Harvard. He would finish his PhD thesis there, a work still worth reading. The suppression of the African slave trade to the United States, published in the Harvard series of books by students. 1903, he would publish a little work that should be the preface to understanding Du Bois, Souls of Black Folks. In one essay, not criticizing Booker T. Washington, but taking some exception to some of the things Booker T. Washington has done. Why don't we just get the book? You can read it in less than an evening. Why don't we just read Souls of Black Folks? Don't take my word for it. I want you to check me out. I want you to try to find me wrong because I know you can't do it. I read his Gift of Black Folks. Then 1915, read his classic essay, Africa in the War. Then read his little book called The Negro, a general survey of African people in the world, doing exceptionally well what I've been trying to do in a condensed form. Give you a picture of African people functioning in a global situation where the basic headquarters of African people throughout the world is Africa itself. So long as we are shy about identifying with Africa, we got a problem that's not going to be solved. Italians never shy of identifying with Italy. Germans are not shy of identifying with Germany. The word German America is longer than the word African America. You can say that. Your tongue don't fall out. No, you got to abbreviate it. Afro. They ain't no fro. So therefore, Afrocentricity is a personal exercise. But if it has any meaning at all, it must be called African centricity.
That's right.
Then if it's called African centricity, it has to broaden its base. It must include the great 19th century radicals. It must include a good analysis of the man who's been called the father of black nationalism, Martin Delany. It must include an analysis of his work, the condition and elevation of the colored race. It must include his work of the history of the concept of race and how it developed. It must include Frederick Douglass. It must include Frederick Douglass with some kind of honesty. Too many times, the whole women live movement want to dismiss Douglass because he wasn't exactly as kind to his black wife as he should have been. All right, I'm sympathetic toward his black wife. But that don't change one iota of Douglass's force, the clarity of his analysis, and the program of the fight he left for us, and his great legacy. Right. The music of Mozart is not less sweet and melodious because he beat his wife, although I'm sympathetic toward the wife. I don't see why any man should beat any woman when he can vote with his feet and walk away. Makes no sense to me. But if you're going to go into that 19th century, you got to deal with this awakening of African consciousness. William Wells Brown, our first novelist, his book about Ethiopia, other books about Ethiopia. You got to do an analysis of George Washington Williams' 2-volume history of black America and how he handled the African question and brought up the question of the elimination of the word Negro. I'm saying Molefi Asante has made a contribution to our consciousness and our direction, but he's merely started, and he's neglected too many monumental figures in our history, too many monumental contributors to our history. Our argument started in the 19th century with the Pan-African Congress, but let me conclude this before the Baptist preacher in me gets the best of me and I talk forever. We went wrong when we failed to understand of all the Pan-African Congresses, the most significant one was the Pan-African Congress in Manchester, England, 1945, convened by Kwame Nkrumah, George Padmore, Nnamdi Azikiwe, John Stone Kenyatta, later Jomo Kenyatta, because that is the Congress that planned the independent explosion of Africa. The other Congress were begging for the right for Africa to have the kind of education that will equip them to rule themselves. In 1945, these conferees said, we are ready now. We are ready to rule ourselves now. We want independence now. Finally, Nkrumah is brought home and became head of the pre-colonial government and eventually head of the state. And this frightened all of the colonial powers, because if Africans became head of that country, start controlling their mineral wealth, they could close down Western industry. They had to stop this in a hurry. So they began to overthrow government after government until they finally overthrew Nkrumah. They'd already killed off Lumumba. Sooner or later, the Pan-African